investigation into the origins of the coronavirus. We discussed this in an interview on Friday as the president this weekend questioned China's role in the pandemic for the very first time, wondering if it was actually an accident. Watch this.
The question was asked, would you be angry at China? Well, the answer might very well be a very resounding yes, but it depends. Was it a mistake that got out of control, or was it done deliberately? Okay, there's a big difference between those two. In either event, they should have let us go in. You know, we asked to go in very early, and they didn't want us in. I think they were embarrassed.
Former White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon was among the first to raise a red flag on China's deception. He wrote an op-ed last May that the U.S. was already at war with the communist country, and he joins me right now to talk more about it. Steve, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Maria.
Steve, that was the first time the president actually publicly raised the question of, was it deliberate? I found that stunning. You haven't heard the president raise such an issue before. Your reaction?
One of the key phrases the president used, and I think if I was in Beijing, I'd be very nervous right now. He said, knowingly responsible, knowingly responsible. And I think, let's set aside for a second, this is a biological Chernobyl, but let's set aside a second the lab and did it leak out of the lab with a technician on trying to find a vaccine. Let's leave aside the fact that were they doing gain of function experiments there against everybody's knowledge. Let's leave aside for a second whether they have an offensive biological weapons program. That's all going to be investigated. As Pompeo and Senator Cotton says, that's all now being investigated by intelligence services, by the World Health Organizations, et cetera. Let's go back to knowingly responsible. And let's be precise. This is not the Chinese people, and this is not China. The Chinese people, the decent, hardworking people of China, are the single biggest victims here. This is about the Chinese Communist Party, and they are knowingly responsible for what happened. This is an act of commission. They knew, as a matter of fact, no later than the last week of December of 2019, they knew they had human-to-human transmission and community spread. The Free Chinese and the Republic of Taiwan, the Republic of China and Taiwan, notified the World Health Organization on January 31st. One of my broadcasting partners, Miles Grove, broadcasted on the 31st about human-to-human transmission. Most importantly, the great martyr of this process in China, Dr. Li, and his colleagues in Wuhan, the doctors, were on WeChat telling everybody, get ready, we have human-to-human transmission. They're coming into the hospitals now. The Chinese Communist Party.
Let me show you this timeline. We have a timeline because it was December 10th, one of the earliest known coronavirus patients falling ill in Wuhan, China. And you're right, the doctor raises the alarm on the coronavirus on December 30th. What happens then, Steve? He gets arrested. He's dead now, as you know, from coronavirus.
Well, he's arrested. He's also tortured. His family is put under surveillance, and they force him to sign a document that says he's a rumor monger, that these are lies, that there's not human-to-human transmission. The Chinese Communist Party at the highest level, that is President Xi and Wang Qishan, knowingly understood they had human-to-human transmission. We also know now from Scott Gottlieb and also from a report by a Chinese doctor at Southampton University in the United Kingdom that if they had acted like any human being would act, decent human, if they had acted as late as the last week of December, 95% of all of this would not have happened. That is the crime here. That's the tragedy here. All the 40,000 Americans that will be dead by tomorrow morning, all the victims in Wuhan that could be tens or hundreds of thousands, all the dead in Lombardy, all the doctors and nurses, all the blood of all that is on the Chinese Communist Party's hands, on Xi and Wang Qishan and their other gangsters. Also, all the economic carnage. It's going to take us decades to work our way out of here eventually. All of that is squarely on the Chinese Communist Party, not the Chinese people. Remember, there were hundreds of thousands of innocent Chinese flying all over the world in the month of January. They didn't know that they had the virus. The Chinese Communist Party hid this. They hid it at the White House on the meetings on the 14th and when they signed. The World Health Organization put out a document on the 12th, and then they tweeted on the 14th. After consultation with senior Chinese medical officials, there's no human-to-human transmission while they're at the White House. Then they go to Davos. You're one of the first ones to actually report this. They don't tell anybody. And when they started to stop the traffic and the travel inside of China, they didn't stop it to the rest of the world. It took Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States, against his medical advisor's opinion, because they were going off what the World Health Organization said. It was Trump that stopped the international travel on the 31st of January. The blood is on the hands of the Chinese Communist Party and the world. For the Chinese people, the people of Wuhan and Hubei, the world must hold these people accountable.
Will the world hold them accountable? I mean, the lying is continuing as we speak. Yesterday at the president's task force press conference, they showed a graphic of the mortality rate, Steve. I mean, it's laughable to think that China is all the way at the bottom of this chart when you've got so many cases across the world and deaths. Look at where China is. I mean, are we supposed to believe that there are fewer deaths in China than anywhere in the world?
I think it was very powerful that President Trump actually interrupted Dr. Birx's presentation, which he never does when she's talking about numbers, to actually point out it's so egregious. We had on our show yesterday from China people that are saying the urns themselves, they cremated their urns, and there's 40 or 50,000 urns. People in Wuhan think that there are probably over 100,000 people in Wuhan that died. And forget the rest of China. We don't know because they lie about everything. But you asked about how they're going to be held accountable. The righteous indignation of the peoples of the world are going to stand up and make sure that they're held accountable. President Trump laid it out. Knowingly responsible. They are knowingly responsible for the acts of commission that all of this could have been avoided. Remember, 60 days ago, we had the greatest economy in American history. The whole world was prosperous. We were looking for a great 2020, a great kickoff to a decade. Now we're looking at economic carnage and the largest mass casualty event in American history caused by a biological Chernobyl and the lies, misrepresentations, and the cover-up. Cotton, who couldn't be on here today, calls it the biggest cover-up in world history. It's incumbent upon the intelligence services, it's incumbent upon the nations of the earth to come together.
Well, the question that I'm asking is, isn't it wild that no one got infected in Beijing? Wow, what a novel thought. I mean, Wuhan, 5 million people start traveling. Some people went to Italy, some people went to the United States. By the way, 433,000 people traveled from China to the United States after it was known that the coronavirus was happening. But nobody got infected in Beijing. I've got to move on to the election. How is this going to impact the election? Do you think Joe Biden is going to be the Democrat candidate given his experience with China?
Well, first off, he's by far the weakest candidate. He's totally compromised. Remember, President Obama basically had Biden as his wingman to do everything with China. His compromise by the Chinese Communist Party. He is personally compromised by the Chinese Communist Party. And that'll all be laid out in details. His family's in business with him. But he has made every bad decision in this managed decline of the United States. It was Joe Biden. Remember, Joe Biden was saying last summer, hey, China's no problem. China's not a problem. It was Joe Biden that took the side of the Chinese Communist Party. He was a useful idiot for the Chinese. When President Trump stands up and says, hey, we got to stop the traffic coming in here, and we have to quarantine the people that come in, it was Biden that took the Beijing party line. It was Biden that went right to, it's xenophobic, it's nativist, it's racist.
So is he the candidate? Is he the candidate, or are the Democrats going to say, well, maybe he's making too many gaffes?
The Democratic Party has no chance of beating Donald J. Trump with Joe Biden. It's not going to happen. Joe Biden is totally compromised by the Chinese Communist Party and by his actions. And by his actions, by the way, I'm not even saying about his health and how fuzzy, how unfocused he looks when he comes on his Proof of Life podcast that he puts out every 3 weeks. Ronna McDaniel at the RNC says something I thought was very...
So is he the candidate or not? Steve, are they going to replace him as the candidate, you think? I
think at the convention they're going to look very seriously at replacing Biden and have somebody that can really take on Trump. Biden cannot take on Donald J. Trump. No way. Not on China and not on any other topic.
Steve, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you, Steve Bannon.